What up, ladies and gents? This is George Bean, and today I am concluding my reviewing the Planet of the Apes Caesar Trilogy with the 2017 film War for the Planet of the Apes, with Matt Reeves returning to direct, the script now written by Reeves and Mark Baumbach, and Andy Serkis once again returning as Caesar, with a new addition in the form of Woody Harrelson as the Colonel. It is the 9th installment in the Planet of the Apes series, and the 3rd film in what I would call the Caesar Trilogy. The film was released on July 14th, 2017, this year, so to say, and was met with universal critical praise, with many reviewers highlighting the acting, particularly that of Serkis, the visual effects, the story, the musical score by Michael Giacchino, and Reeves' direction. And it has grossed over $490 million worldwide, making it the third highest grossing film in the franchise. The plot, set 2 years after the events of Dawn, the military has been called upon to deal with the ape attacks on the human survivor colony in the Muir Red Woods in San Francisco, thrusting Caesar and his tribe of evolved apes into a devastating war. After the apes end up suffering unimaginable losses, with his wife and older son included, Caesar goes on a mythical quest to avenge his kind and search for a ruthless special forces colonel who is hell-bent on exterminating the apes for good. But upon confronting the colonel, Caesar then finds himself put into the ultimate test which will cement his legacy in future ape generations to come. Even when they were still filming Dawn, the producers were confident that they had a hit on their hands, and had immediately began plans for a 3rd film. And after the Fox executives have seen Reeves' initial cut of Dawn, and were impressed by it, they quickly signed him on to return for the 3rd film, along with Andy Serkis. Before they even began writing the script, Reeves and co-writer Mark Baumbach decided to watch hundreds of films to gain inspiration. They ended up watching every Planet of the Apes film, westerns, war movies, and even Empire Strikes Back. And then they both saw the broader inspiration from films like Apocalypse Now, Bridge on the River Kwai, and The Great Escape, as well as watching biblical epics like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments to imbue biblical themes and elements to Caesar's arc. After seeing Dawn, I was really excited for the next film that was set for the 2017 release, as well as Matt Reeves having signed on to return. I remember hearing back in May 2015, I think, that the title was originally announced as War of the Planet of the Apes, but 5 months later, in October, it had been retitled to War for the Planet of the Apes. They had been talking about how the next film would focus on the human-ape war that they hinted at in the ending to Dawn, and how Caesar would have to do what he can to protect his fellow apes from total complete extinction. I was really excited, and upon seeing the trailers, I was pumped with action, with what I was seeing, but I'd also decided to go in with low expectations, because I felt I had went into Dawn with high expectations, and not as much expecting what we had ended up with. Really, when you look at the trailers for War, you expect it to be an action-packed war movie, but when you actually see the movie, it is not. It's more of a psychological drama thriller, or better yet, a character-driven revenge drama, focusing on Caesar's struggles with his darker instincts, with the war acting as a backdrop to it all, kind of like Apocalypse Now. Now, to bring up most of the cast, Andy Serkis is once again really good as Caesar, but I believe in this film he delivers what could quite possibly be his tour de force moment here, struggling with his internal emotions, being driven by revenge and yet also trying to protect this tribe from being destroyed. There are moments where he fears that he is becoming like Koba, being unable to escape his hate towards humans. Andy Serkis is really good. He truly deserves to be awarded for his performance as Caesar. He will truly be remembered for this. Woody Harrelson was astounding as the Colonel. I'm sure all of you know who Harrelson is. He was in movies like Money Train, No Country for Old Men, and he has had a bit of a career resurgence after starring in the TV series True Detective. But here, he gives his A-game to the role. He plays a Colonel Kurtz type who becomes hell-bent on exterminating the apes for good, and also has an extreme survival of the fittest agenda to preserve humanity as the dominant species. While the Colonel may not become as hugely memorable as Koba, but he is certainly much more better than Rise's villain Stephen Jacobs. Oh, and another thing, the Colonel does have a name. It's mentioned in quick passing, but he is, only once, referred to as Colonel McCulloch. But whatever, Caesar calls him the Colonel, the movie credits him as the Colonel, so I'm just gonna call him the Colonel. What about to say from here on will include spoilers, so if you have not seen the movie and yet and don't want to be spoiled yet, please stop this video and go watch the movie. Seriously, stop the video and go watch this. Buy it on DVD or rent it, don't matter, go see it. It's that fucking good. Okay? Okay, here goes. There's a big scene between Caesar and the Colonel, where we learn more of who the Colonel is and why he is the way he is. And it's also where we learn that apparently the ALZ-113 virus, which Caesar's surrogate father, Dr. Will Rodman, had created, has apparently mutated, and now causes any human survivors who still carry the virus to be rendered to mute and possibly primitive states. I honestly really like that revelation, because it acts as a kind of sort of setup for what is to happen to humankind in the 1968 original film. Now, these movies are a reboot series, but they're using the original films as a sort of inspirational template, so we can also watch these movies as prequels, but prequels that prefer to focus on characters rather than setting up events to come, unlike other prequels that just mostly set up events over focusing on characters. And we also have Steve Zahn as Bad Ape, who is the film's comic relief, and gotta say, Bad Ape was just fucking hilarious in this. He helps levitate the movie with his somewhat unintentionally comedic moments. I love that one moment where he's given the binoculars, but he ends up looking through them backwards, to which she says, "Oh no, why so small?" Then Maurice turns it around for him, looks through them again, and he says, "Oh." Brilliant. He does have some funny moments. Steve Zahn is brilliant as Bad Ape. And finally, we have Karen Konoval as Maurice and Terry Notary as Rocket, both of whom get to have moments to really shine in this film. But last but not least, we have a young-aged newcomer named Amia Miller, playing the role of a mute orphan whom Maurice befriends and ends up naming her Nova. Now, granted, I consider kids in a movie to be the ultimate make or break of a film. But here, since she's playing a child who is mute, it kind of helps for the movie, and she is really good in it. I liked her. Now, Michael Giacchino returned to score the film, and I've gotta say, goddamn did he outdo himself with this. He conveys enough emotion in the score for us to truly care for the apes. My favorite piece is when Nova gives Caesar food and water before the imprisoned apes show their loyalty to him by doing the apes together strong sign. It's done so well, and it is an amazing scene that does not use dialogue. using the good old-fashioned show-don't-tell rule to a T. Also, if you listen carefully, there are a few moments in the score that kind of sound like that of Jerry Goldsmith, which is fitting because Jerry Goldsmith did do the score for the original Planet of the Apes. And I also love that Giacchino uses the piano in the score. The piano is something that I don't think has ever been used in a long while in movies, so I was really happy to hear it in this. It's good to hear the piano back in musical scores. When watching the film, you can definitely see many similarities to Apocalypse Now, Bridge on the River Kwai, The Great Escape, and The Ten Commandments. Ironically, Bridge on the River Kwai is actually based on a book by Pierre Boulle, who also wrote the Planet of the Apes book. And also, Ben-Hur and Ten Commandments had also starred Charlton Heston, who played Taylor in the originals, so go figure. I really don't want to spoil what happens in the film, but seriously, go watch it, and you'll quickly notice the similarities. They're actually done pretty well. And also, Caesar's arc in this film is really reminiscent of the story of Moses and leading an exodus of his fellow prisoners to a promised land, and how he had to perform a monumental, miraculous moment to destroy the oppressive army pursuing them. In Moses' cases, it was having to part the Red Sea, while in Caesar's case, it was having to accidentally cause a massive avalanche. And once again, this movie also references the original Planet of the Apes films. The mute girl is named Nova, after Taylor's mate in the original, and how she gets her name is actually done pretty well here, getting it from a Chevy Nova car plate. It's done pretty well. When you see the car plate and it says the Chevy with it, it has Nova as the logo. And that's how Maurice gives her the name Nova. Pretty good. And the Colonel's Renegade Army calls themselves Alpha Omega in homage to the Alpha Omega bomb in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. But what I really love about both Dawn and War is that they do homage and or reference the original films, but it's not done in a literal manner like Rise did. Specifically, in the case of Rise, taking memorable lines from the originals and working them into the new film. Here, the references are done subtly, but still give these films a chance to stand on their own, without having to literally reference the original. You can still watch these movies cold. And for the home base where the Alpha Omega soldiers are based at, which is revealed to be a military quarantine facility, where Caesar finds his tribe imprisoned and being forced to build a wall. Sounds familiar. It is kind of like an homage to how Taylor found himself being locked up in cages and being treated like an animal in the original. But here, it is a lot worse. It also kind of reminds me of one of those concentration camps from World War II. I mean, jeez. Taylor thought the place he was caged in was a madhouse. Man, this place is a fucking nightmare compared to that. Now, back in October 2016, it was announced that Fox was already beginning plans for a fourth Planet of the Apes film. But so far, as of now, there haven't been any new updates for the fourth film. But you know what? After seeing War's ending, I believe it is best that they leave it alone here. You've got this amazing trilogy that had begun with the hero's birth and ended with his death. There's no way you can top that kind of trilogy ender. I mean, plus, you'd have 3 great films and 1 standout fourth film. Kind of like the Scream films. You have 3 great films and a fourth that stands out like a sore thumb. But that's a story for another video. Now, just to break it down, when I saw this in cinema, I loved it immensely. I was so emotionally engaged by what I was watching on the screen. And no kidding, at several points during the film, especially during the final climax, I was becoming teary-eyed a lot. That was something I had never done before in a theater. If a movie can make me feel very emotional, then it's certainly working. And War for the Planet of the Apes had passed that test with flying colors. Like for one big example, when the when the climax kicked in and when the Northern Army shows up to battle the Alpha Omega, I got all smiley with the action, and then when it all culminated with Caesar blowing the wall and the entire facility to smithereens, which results in a huge avalanche to bury the ruined facility and the entire Northern Army, I was just dumbfoundingly happy, smiley with the action going on. I just loved how it went nuts with its action. It felt like I was gifted for my patience, while also being emotionally engaged by what is going on in the action. But it is a shame, such a sad shame, that this film had only grossed nearly $500 million at the box office. Only half of what Dawn had grossed. I think I have a few contributing factors for why. Number one being competition. It got slumped in between Spider-Man Homecoming, which was released the week before, and the acclaimed Christopher Nolan war movie Dunkirk, which was released the week after. So I could say that War was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. If you ask me, I believe Fox should have released this film in August, as it was the time when the summer blockbuster season was starting to die down. But I guess they don't do release dates very well. Number two being the dark tone. Yes, this movie is overtly dark and somewhat depressing, which may turn people off from it. But in honesty, I believe the dark tone helps benefit to the film, because it shows Caesar having to struggle with his darker instincts. And it is also at this point when things get really dark and mature. Same can be said for Return of the Jedi, which also had a bit of a dark tone to it, mainly when it involves heavy emotional scenes, especially in the scenes where Luke confronts Darth Vader, his father, and the Emperor in the final third of the film. And number three being the title. As I said earlier, War for the Planet of the Apes does sound a bit misleading. Going in, you'd expect it to be an action-packed war movie, but it's not. It's more like a character-driven revenge drama, and also in Reeves' words, a Darwinian biblical epic. Someone had once told me that the title was originally supposed to be Age of the Planet of the Apes, which in all honesty sounds a bit more fitting, but I guess Fox wanted the title to sound a bit more punchier and cool. That and with two previous movies having already used the Age word in their titles, those being Transformers, Age of Extinction, and Avengers Age of Ultron, I guess Fox wanted to avoid comparison, and this film isn't the first time they did this, because X-Men Apocalypse was initially to be called Age of Apocalypse, but Fox nixed that for the same reason. But overall, because I immensely love this movie, I need to give War for the Planet of the Apes a rating of 8.5 stars out of 10, because it is an outstanding third film that did the impossible, not suck. Andy Serkis offers a tour de force performance in this. Storyline is very intriguing and emotional to sit through. Michael Giacchino's music score is overtly emotional. It ends Caesar's arc perfectly, and it is what I consider to be one of the very best conclusions to a film trilogy ever. And, having been impressed by Matt Reeves' work on these two Planet of the Apes films, I am honestly excited to see what he has in store for us now that he is currently slated to direct the Batman solo movie for the DC Extended Universe, which is set for a 2019 release date. Shame that Ben Affleck may not be returning as Batman in it, but whatevs. It was fun. It was fun to see him in the role while it lasted. But still, what a great way to end such a trilogy. Yeah? Definitely, if you'd have told me in 2010 that I would end up loving these three movies, I'd be like, yeah, right. I'm glad I could never thought I'd be wrong, ever be glad to be wrong for once. Wow, these movies were great. Definitely the best several years of my life watching these movies. So thanks for watching, ladies and gents, and until then, I'll see y'all next time, and remember, apes together strong.